How does a Hollywood icon, accustomed to red carpets and flashing cameras, find himself drawn into the struggles of a fragile young girl who clings to a pirate coin as if it were her last hope? What secrets lie behind her weary eyes, and why does fear seem to consume her? When Johnny Depp steps out of his luxurious hotel, he expects another routine day, until Sonia, a frail child with no home and nowhere to turn, desperately pleads for his help. But who is she running from? What battle is she silently fighting? As Johnny follows his instincts to uncover the truth, he's faced with a question far greater than fame. Can he truly save her, or will the real fight be against time itself? Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Johnny Depp couldn't. He stopped thinking about the frightened girl who had called out to him outside his hotel, begging for help. She introduced herself as Sonia, clutching a small pirate coin that glinted in the dim glow of the streetlights. She said she had nowhere to go, and her weary eyes revealed a desperation that tugged at his heart. He knew he couldn't simply turn away. He led Sonia to a bench by the hotel's entrance. Crouching beside her, he asked where she came from and if anyone could care for her. Sonia hesitated, glancing down at the coin in her hand. Her ragged clothes and dirt-smudged cheeks told a story of hardship no child should endure. "I don't have anyone," she whispered. "I've been on my own for a while." Her words made Johnny's heart clench. She confessed she felt ill, punctuating her statement with a deep, rattling cough. Concerned, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "All right, love," he said gently. "Let's find you a safe place tonight and figure out what's going on." He called his driver, and they headed for a small local clinic. Sonia trembled beside him in the car, clutching that pirate coin as though it were her only anchor. Johnny tried to calm her with a faint smile, but she winced each time she coughed. At the clinic, a compassionate nurse named Miss Abigail guided them into an examination room. Though startled to see a famous actor with a distressed child, she remained professional. Sonia clung to her coin, managing a timid smile whenever Johnny slipped into a playful Jack Sparrow routine. "How serious is it?" Johnny asked, his voice low. Miss Abigail explained the clinic's limited capabilities. If Sonia's condition was significant, a larger hospital was necessary. The nurse performed basic tests. Each stethoscope press made Sonia flinch, her raspy breathing echoing in the cramped space. Johnny wiped away the tear that slid down her cheek. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll get you the help you need." Outside the exam room, Johnny arranged a transfer to a more advanced facility. As he made calls, Sonia dozed off in a plastic chair, exhaustion winning. Seeing her so vulnerable only strengthened his resolve. Within an hour, an ambulance arrived. Paramedics gently placed Sonia on a stretcher. Startled awake, she reached for Johnny with frightened eyes. He grasped her hand. "It's going to be all right," he said in a calming tone. "I'm staying with you." Sonia's eyes glistened with tears, but she nodded. Johnny climbed in beside her, ignoring the puzzled looks. Nothing mattered but reassuring her. As they sped through dark streets, the ambulance lights flickered against the windows. He prayed for her well-being, hoping they weren't too late. Johnny watched the monitors tracking her vitals, every beep echoing in his ears. He wondered how a child ended up so alone. Another cough shook her, and he gently touched her shoulder, silently promising not to leave her. At one point, she opened her eyes, looking up at him with a faint glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she breathed, as though each word cost her energy. Johnny simply nodded, overwhelmed by the trust she placed in him. He had faced Hollywood spotlights and public scrutiny, but nothing compared to the gravity of this. They arrived at the hospital under bright fluorescent lights. A doctor waited at the entrance, and Johnny helped guide Sonia inside. Though anxious, he maintained a steady voice as she was wheeled into a new examination room. "I'm right here," he reminded her. "We'll get through this together." Sonia clutched her pirate coin like a lifeline, eyes darting around the unfamiliar environment. She looked so small on the hospital bed, her face etched with fear and pain. Yet, a spark of resolve shone in her gaze, as though she refused to surrender. Johnny stood beside her, heart pounding. His life was often chaotic, but never like this. Still, he was determined to protect Sonia. No matter how uncertain the path might be, he vowed not to abandon her. As the medical staff rushed around them, he squeezed her hand, ready to face whatever came next. Johnny paced the corridor of the bustling hospital, glancing at the clock on the wall. Nurses and doctors hurried past, their faces set with professional focus. Yet all he could think about was Sonia, lying in an examination room beyond those doors. Moments ago, she had been whisked off by the medical team for a series of tests. The memory of her anxious eyes clinging to him as they parted weighed heavily on his mind. He reminded himself that this hospital was far better equipped than the small clinic. Here, specialists could determine exactly what was wrong. Even so, he felt powerless, uncertain whether he'd done enough. He wanted to burst in and comfort her, but he had to respect the hospital rules and let the professionals do their work. Finally, a doctor emerged, checking a clipboard of notes. Johnny rushed forward to ask after Sonia. The doctor introduced himself as Dr. Marvey, an oncologist. His expression remained grave as he relayed findings, suspicious lesions that could indicate cancer. Johnny's breath caught in his throat. The word cancer echoed through his thoughts, and he struggled to process the possibility of this brave child battling something so terrifying. Dr. Marvey explained they needed more tests to confirm, but looked advanced. A wave of guilt nearly overwhelmed Johnny, considering how long Sonia might have gone untreated. Still, he had to stay calm, taking a steadying breath. He pressed the doctor for treatment options. Dr. Marvey outlined an intense plan: surgery, followed by aggressive therapy. It was clear Sonia's best chance was immediate action. Johnny agreed without hesitation, instructing Dr. Marvey to do whatever it took. He promised to cover all costs. Soon, Sonia was transferred to a quieter wing of the hospital. Johnny managed to see her briefly before she was taken in for more scans. She looked so small on the bed, the pirate coin nestled in her frail fingers. When her gaze locked with his, he mustered his calmest smile. "We'll get through this," he said gently. Miss Abigail, who had followed them from the clinic, stood nearby, tears brimming in her eyes. She confessed she had found Sonia on the steps of her orphanage, but the child had run off before any formal adoption could begin. Johnny listened with a heavy heart, resolving to help in every way possible. Time blurred in the hospital's sterile corridors while doctors worked on Sonia. Johnny fielded phone calls from concerned associates. Nothing mattered more to him than ensuring Sonia's survival. Eventually, Dr. Marvey approached again. This time, there was a hint of hope in his eyes. Sonia's cancer was indeed advanced, but surgery might buy them time. Chemo could follow, but they needed to move quickly. Johnny agreed to sign every release form required. Before they wheeled Sonia into surgery, Johnny was allowed a moment by her side. Her pale face brightened slightly when he entered. Softly, he slipped into his Jack Sparrow persona. "Captain Jack is here, love," he said with exaggerated flair, "ready to fight these scurvy scoundrels with you." She gave a weak laugh, though exhaustion shadowed her eyes. She tried to speak, but a harsh cough cut her off. Johnny laid a hand on her forehead. "Save your strength," he whispered. "We're in this together." Medical staff gently rolled her bed toward the operating theater. Her pirate coin slipped from her grasp, clattering on the sheets. Johnny snatched it up and pressed it into her hand. "Hold on to this," he urged. "It's your lucky charm." As the doors swung shut, Miss Abigail joined him in the hallway. She reached out, placing a consoling hand on his shoulder. Johnny covered her hand with his own, grateful for the support. Every beep of the equipment behind those closed doors felt like thunder in his heart. They settled into tense silence, waiting for word that the surgery had begun. For both of them, the minutes felt like hours, each second carrying the weight of hope and fear. Johnny closed his eyes, summoning all the calm he could muster. He reflected on how fate had led him here, to stand by this child in her fight. Johnny sat in the hospital waiting area, drumming his fingers on the armrest of a plastic chair. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled the air. Miss Abigail had stepped out briefly to call the orphanage, leaving Johnny alone with his thoughts. Anxiety gnawed at him, intensifying with every passing minute that Sonia remained in surgery. Sonia's plea for help, her admission that she was ill, and the horrifying possibility of advanced cancer looming over a child so young. He silently prayed for a miracle, recalling the way she smiled whenever he spoke in his Jack Sparrow voice. That small glimmer of hope in her eyes pushed him to stay strong. After what felt like a while, the swinging doors to the operating room opened. Dr. Marvey emerged, his surgical mask still dangling around his neck. Johnny jumped to his feet, heart pounding. The doctor's expression was somber, but not entirely grim. Surgery went as well as we could have hoped under the circumstances, Dr. Marvey said. We managed to remove a significant portion of the tumor, but there were complications. We'll need to monitor Sonia closely. Relief washed over Johnny, mingled with worry. It wasn't a complete victory, but at least there was a fighting chance. Can I see her? He asked, voice trembling. Dr. Marvey nodded. She's being moved to the ICU. Give nurses a moment to settle her in, then you can visit. She'll likely be groggy in pain. Johnny murmured his thanks. She clasped his hand, eyes wet with tears. Together, they navigated the corridor to the intensive care unit, guided by a nurse who sympathized with their plight. In the ICU, the mechanical beeps of medical equipment underscored the gravity of Sonia's condition. Tubes and wires trailed from her small frame, and in foredrip delivered much-needed fluids and medication. Johnny swallowed hard, hating to see her like this. He approached the bed. Sonia's eyes were half closed, her complexion pale against the pillows. Yet, when he whispered her name, she stirred, lids fluttering open just enough to see him. Captain Jack, she rasped, her voice barely audible. Her other hand twitched, searching for something. Johnny realized she was looking for a pirate coin. With gentle care, he placed the coin in her hand. Her fingers curled weakly around it, and a trace of relief flickered in her tired eyes. You did great, love, he murmured. We're all here, cheering you on. Miss Abigail stood on the other side of the bed, brushing Sonia's hair back from her forehead. Rest, dear one, she whispered, tears threatening to spill. Johnny stayed with Sonia until a nurse reminded him of the hospital's strict visiting policies. Come back in the morning, she said gently. She needs rest right now. Reluctantly, Johnny and Miss Abigail left the ICU. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, covering her face with her hands. Johnny placed an arm around her, offering what comfort he could. I can't stand seeing her like that, Miss Abigail managed, wiping her tears. But at least she's alive. Johnny nodded, his gaze drifting back to the closed doors of the ICU. Alive and fighting. That single fact gave him enough hope to keep moving forward. Sleep proved elusive that night. Johnny dozed in a nearby lounge, unable to find real peace. Dawn arrived with muted sunlight filtering through the hospital windows, casting a pale glow on the walls. The next morning, Johnny was at the ICU doors the moment visiting hours began. Sonia had managed to rest, though she remained weak and disoriented. Miss Abigail had arrived early too, bringing a small stuffed animal from the orphanage. They placed it beside Sonia's pillow. Dr. Marvey entered with an update. We've scheduled follow-up scans in a day or two. If those look promising, we'll plan the next stage of treatment. It won't be easy, but every sign of progress is a victory. Johnny thanked him, determined to see Sonia through, no matter the cost. She had reached out to him in desperation. He would not fail her. Her feeble smile, though faint, felt like the first triumphant step toward a future free from pain. He persisted. Morning blurred into afternoon, and Johnny maintained a vigilant presence at the hospital. The bustling hallways, hushed staff conversations, and constant monitor beeps had become his new normal. Whenever visiting hours began, he was at Sonia's side, offering small smiles and words of encouragement. Though still serious, Sonia's condition showed subtle improvement. Dr. Marvey's updates were cautiously optimistic. The surgery had bought precious time, and upcoming scans would guide the path forward. Chemo loomed as a daunting prospect, but each hour brought hope that her resilience was stronger than expected. Miss Abigail balanced her duties at the orphanage with regular visits. She and Johnny formed a steadfast alliance, determined to give Sonia emotional support. Together, they decorated a corner of her room with colorful drawings from the orphanage children. A bright picture of a pirate ship on the wall reminded everyone of Sonia's bravery. Johnny sometimes read aloud from Treasure Island. Sonia would listen with heavy eyelids, occasionally asking him to mimic Jack Sparrow's voice. Even when her laughter was faint, the spark in her eyes spoke volumes. It was then Johnny realized how crucial a bit of hope could be. Eager to find the best treatment, Dr. Marvey arranged a consultation with Dr. Morrison, a specialist renowned for handling complex cancer cases. Johnny recognized the name. He'd met Dr. Morrison at a charity gala. The doctor's advanced methods had saved many lives, and Johnny sensed he might be key to Sonia's survival. Upon arrival, Dr. Morrison reviewed Sonia's recent scans and conferred with Dr. Marvey. They agreed an aggressive chemotherapy plan, possibly combined with targeted therapies, offered the best chance of defeating the cancer. They warned it would be grueling, but time was not on their side. Johnny demanded answers to every question that arose, refusing to leave any detail unchecked. Dr. Morrison's honesty and compassion reassured him, though the outcomes remained uncertain. Sonia's fierce spirit, they all agreed, was her greatest weapon. With decisions made, Johnny authorized the next steps. Funding wasn't an obstacle. He would spare no expense. As paperwork was signed, relief and worry mingled in his chest. The ordeal would be harsh, but this was Sonia's best shot. When the first round of chemo began, nurses explained each phase gently. They hooked up a portable 4-pole to Sonia's bedside, the bags of medication seeming both ominous and life-saving. Johnny was permitted to stay, though warned it could last for hours. Sonia clutched her pirate coin, drifting in and out of fitful sleep. Johnny sat close, occasionally reading softly when she stirred. Miss Abigail joined as well, her arm around Sonia, lending comfort. Despite the tense atmosphere, an undercurrent of hope ran through each hushed moment. The side effects struck quickly. Within hours, Sonia's color faded, and nausea gripped her frail body. The staff assured Johnny this was normal, yet he felt helpless witnessing her distress. More than once, he slipped into the hallway, breathing deeply to steady himself. Days blurred into nights ruled by medication schedules, blood tests, and restless hours. Sonia fought each moment with quiet bravery, astonishing Johnny. She even asked him to joke around in his pirate voice, though her own speech was barely above a whisper. Dr. Morrison visited often, adjusting dosages based on Sonia's lab results. Some days brought minor triumphs, like a stable temperature or improved blood counts. Others delivered setbacks, such as infections thriving in her weakened immune system. Johnny celebrated every small success, drawing solace from each glimpse of hope. One late night, after Sonia finally fell asleep, Johnny discovered Miss Abigail praying in the hospital's chapel. He slid into the pew beside her, the silent space around them full of unspoken worries. At length, she whispered, "I'm grateful you found her. There's a reason your paths crossed." Johnny nodded, feeling the same certainty. Chance, destiny, or divine will. Something beyond logic had led him to a homeless girl with an indomitable spirit. He intended to see her story through to a hopeful ending, whatever it cost. 2 days later, Johnny was seated in a business meeting discussing future film projects. As much as he tried to concentrate, his thoughts kept drifting to Sonia's hospital room. He'd been receiving updates from Miss Abigail, but the waiting wore on his nerves like a slow, steady drumbeat. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Glancing at the caller ID, he saw Dr. Morrison's name. Without hesitation, he excused himself from the meeting and answered in the hallway, heart pounding. "How is she, doctor?" Dr. Morrison's voice held cautious excitement. "We have promising news. Johnny, Sonia's latest tests look much better than expected. We're planning to bring her out of sedation soon." Relief flooded Johnny. He signaled his driver and rushed to the hospital. his mind racing with a mixture of hope and anxiety. He recalled Sonia's unwavering trust in him, her determined smile as she faced each challenge. He silently prayed those days of suffering had led to this moment of reprieve. Arriving at the hospital, Johnny noticed a reporter stationed at the entrance, camera ready. Clearly, rumors of his regular visits had sparked media curiosity. Johnny steeled himself, determined to protect Sonia's privacy at all costs. When the reporter approached, Johnny asked him to turn off the camera. Speaking with quiet urgency, he explained there was a very sick child who needed peace, not publicity. To Johnny's relief, the young cameraman agreed, compassion shining through his professional ambition. Hurrying inside, Johnny found Sonia's room and froze at the sight of her. Even unconscious, she looked better, her skin less pale, her breathing steadier. The beloved pirate coin lay on the bedside table, the hat perched nearby. Johnny settled into a chair, keeping vigil just as he'd promised. Hours passed while he whispered hopeful stories of future travels, waiting for any sign she might stir. Finally, Sonia's eyelids fluttered. Her gaze remained unfocused for a moment. Then she saw Johnny. A weak but genuine smile appeared. "Captain Jack," she rasped, voice hoarse with disuse. Johnny felt a swell of emotion. "Welcome back, first mate," he said, blinking back tears. "You've been on quite the adventure." Sonia managed a small grin. "Did we win?" she asked, searching his face. He nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude. "We're winning, love. You're the bravest pirate I know." Dr. Morrison soon entered, smiling broadly as he checked her vitals. Sonia was groggy but responsive, able to sip water and adjust to sitting up. The doctor took Johnny into the hallway, revealing the best news he could offer. Sonia's cancer was receding significantly. She would still need follow-up care, but the hardest chapter appeared to be behind them. The weight lifted from Johnny's shoulders. He thanked Dr. Morrison profusely, then returned to Sonia. Slipping into his Jack Sparrow persona, he joked, "Look at you, outsmarting those scurvy scoundrels like a true pirate. The doctor says you'll be fine." Sonia's eyes shone with a newfound light. "Really?" she breathed, glancing at Dr. Morrison, who confirmed it gently. Though she was weak, hope radiated from her smile. When Sonia grew tired, Johnny dialed the orphanage so she could see her friends. They crowded the screen, waving hand-drawn signs of encouragement. Sonia's laughter, though soft, filled the room with a warmth that nearly brought Johnny to tears. Miss Abigail appeared on the call, too, beaming with pride. Later that afternoon, Dr. Morrison explained Sonia's follow-up regimen: regular checkups, medication, and monitoring to ensure no recurrence. Johnny instantly agreed to fund whatever she required. As the doctor left, Johnny faced Miss Abigail with determination. "I want to help more children like Sonia," he said. "We can improve your orphanage, offer medical programs, whatever it takes." Miss Abigail's eyes brimmed with gratitude. "That's incredibly generous, Mr. Depp. Are you certain?" Johnny nodded. "I'm sure. This is just the beginning. Sonia's shown me what really matters." Sonia slept peacefully, her pirate coin in one hand and Johnny's hand in the other. He stayed by her side, heart bursting with relief and renewed purpose. The improbable bond between a Hollywood star and a courageous orphan had forged a path neither of them could have foreseen. Now, Johnny was ready to face any future challenges armed with the lessons of a little girl who refused to give up on life, or on him. Over the weeks that followed, Sonia's strength returned in small, steady increments. She gained color in her cheeks and learned to smile without wincing from pain. Each time Johnny visited, she greeted him with a spark of hope that reminded him just how far they had come. Dr. Morrison remained diligent, monitoring her progress and fine-tuning the medications that kept her cancer at bay. Miss Abigail coordinated with Johnny on plans to overhaul the orphanage's medical facilities and create a charitable foundation, ensuring that other children in dire circumstances could receive life-saving treatment. Sonia became an inspiration to everyone who crossed her path, a living testament to resilience and faith. Even hospital staff marveled at her turnaround, calling it nothing short of miraculous. When the day finally came for Sonia to leave the hospital, Johnny was there, helping her into a waiting car. She held his hand with that same trusting grip he remembered from the night they first met outside his hotel. Yet this time, her eyes shone with confident anticipation rather than fear. As they drove away, Johnny reflected on the extraordinary journey they had shared. Sonia had entered his life as a desperate plea in the darkness, but she had given him more than he ever thought possible. Through her courage, determination, and unwavering belief in the power of hope, she had opened his heart to a greater purpose. No matter what awaited them, their bond was unbreakable. And in that unlikeliest of meetings, between a Hollywood icon and a homeless girl, a new future had been forged, defined by compassion, generosity, and a promise to always look beyond the spotlight to where the real battles for life and hope are fought.